Over the years, fantastical fantasy maps and books have lighted readers' imaginations, immersing them in the world of the author. And here you are, an author, having written your fantasy book, and you want a fantasy map in it. And there's a few different options. You can pay somebody, you can pay an illustrator to create a map of your world for you, or since you know your world best, you can try and create one yourself. Now, you'll notice in most books, fantasy maps aren't perfect because most of the time, authors aren't also illustrators. But the reality is, if you go that extra mile to create your own fantasy map, it means a ton to the readers as they immerse themselves in your world. In this video, I want to go over elements that will help you to create an amazing fantasy map of your world. It's time for another author side quest. Let's get it. Now, there's several different programs that you can utilize to draw your own map. And you can use Photoshop, you can use GIMP, you can use all sorts of different things. But the one I really enjoy using is called Clip Studio Paint. It's an amazing program that has all sorts of different features. It's especially designed for comics, but it doesn't have to be just utilized for comics. Let me show you. If you're like me, your map is going to start out something like this. It's going to look, let's be honest, pretty sketchy and scratchy and everything else. We start on paper because we're writing a book and we're trying to figure out all the different locations that they're gonna go. We gotta try and figure out, oh, this is gonna be a mountainous area, this is gonna be by a lake, this is gonna be a sea. You gotta figure all those things out while you're writing the book. So we kind of make these terrible, awful looking sketches, and this is what we're left with. It's a good starting point and it'll get us going on the right page. For my fantasy map, I wanted it to be on one page of my book. So in Clip Studio Paint, I created a new project at 8.5 by 11 inches at 600 DPI. Now, if we go too much further, if we go to 1200 DPI, it's gonna be a huge file and it's probably gonna be hard to work on. So we started with this wonderful sketch here. After taking a picture of this off of a piece of paper, I threw it in here just to get us going. Now, one of the first elements that we're gonna wanna have is a border of some sort. Now, you don't necessarily need a border for your map, but I really wanted a border. So once you get your border set up, expand your penciled sketch as big as you can get it inside that border. Now notice that I've got some things up here that are really crunched up, and that's because I actually wanted these further up, but I ran out of space on my page. So I just threw them at the top. I had little arrows that said they're supposed to go somewhere else up here, but I ran out of space on my page. No big deal, I can fix that in here. Also, you'll notice that I end down here, and really that's gonna leave some space where we're gonna have to put some other things, which is totally fine because I had planned on my map being bigger than this. Now, once our border's in there, the first thing that we want to get set up is our landmass and our waterways, because this is going to shape the continent that we are creating. Everything is going to fall inside the landmass or the waterways, right? So that's a pretty important thing. Let's get our landmass and waterways in here. Now notice how in my sketch, I had a sketch going and you could see the landmass and the waterways sort of started here, but you couldn't see everything perfectly. But now, once I put some inks on it, now we're starting to look like we've got a real map going here. Now you notice that on the coasts, I've got a nice thick line, and then I've got kind of a thinner line on the outside of that. And then if you look out a little further, you get a little bit of a wave kind of feel in there. And then if you look here, you can see this is the lake, and then you can follow this river out to the sea. And that'll really establish waterways and the landmass and where everything is. Now notice up here, I added some islands and this nice giant lake up here towards the tundra. You can come down here. You can follow the waterways all the way down, you can see the lakes, the islands, and other things. We're really just establishing where everything is going to fit in the map. Now you notice that we've got cities and other things all over the place. We've got this forest here, we've got cities here, we've got a lake here that we ended up changing and adjusting in our inks. And that's okay. We can change things as we go. We're the ones creating this world after all. Now, once we have our landmass and our waterways, we gotta pinpoint where all our cities are going to be located. We kind of know what cities are gonna be where, but we wanna really solidify that with our ink markings. So we're gonna drop location dots. Check this out. So once we put our location dots in, you'll notice that I've got a location dot here for Whitestone, a location here for Tamaria, one for Lorelith, and all these other locations, okay? Notice up here, I don't have these locations marked, and that's okay. What I'm doing there is each of those cities are orc cities. They're mountain steads. The orcs in my world live in mountain steads. So each of their cities isn't going to be marked by a dot on my map, but rather a distinct mountain for each individual city. Once we have the dot locations, now we got to put all the names on there. Now the names are kind of tricky because you have to have the names on there before you start doing mountains or trees or anything else like that, because you have to make sure people know where each piece is. And after you do the name locations, it kind of adjusts how you have to do the rest of it. Let me show you. Let's put our name locations on here. Boom. Notice how I put all of our name locations. Each city has its own name next to it. A couple of things are Whitestone Forest here, or there's the Elderwood Forest there, or the Wildlands down here. We've got the Nari Desert down here, right? And we've got river names going on. We've got the Stranded Coast over here. But notice how up here, I've got Drelek, this big name right here, to make sure that everybody knows that this is the nation or the country of Drelek up here. And that's an important piece for my story. So if you have an important piece for your story, you got to make sure that it's in there. You know your story, and if there's an important element of the story that needs to be in the map, well, make sure you get it in there. This continent is called Turin, and so at the top we're going to make map of Turin. We're starting to look pretty good now, actually. But if we take away our sketch, it looks rather plain. Our sketch kind of gave it some dimension, right? You see all these extra things going on, and you can kind of tell, okay, there are different elements going on here. But we don't have those in the inks yet. Once we have all the location names, we also have to add our compass rose. Now this is kind of important. Some people add it a little bit later, just leaving space for it, but it's also kind of important to know where it's going to be so that you can work that into your map. I'm going to show you where I put mine first, and then I worked around it. And the compass rose is something you can get really creative with. So let's add our compass rose. Ba-bam, ba-bam. Add a little shading here. You see, you can get really creative with your compass rose. It doesn't have to be north, south, east, west. You can do a little arrow with it being north. I've got a griffin here and a wyvern going on right here, just to do something a little extra fun and specific for my fantasy map. Once you have all those really kind of important things that have to be on there and everything else can work around it, now is the time to add all the extra things, aka your mountains, your hills, your sand, your trees, all that stuff. Let me show you. So like I told you earlier, up here in Drelek is a very mountainous nation, and you'll notice that all of the cities don't have location dots like Lorelith or Whitestone or Hillstop, because like I said, I wanted to make them unique mountains. One of the things that's important is when you're doing mountains, you want your mountains to move around all the words that have to be on there. Also note that your mountains should go around your different waterways and around your different land masses. So for example, you're not going to see a mountain going off into the sea. You're going to see it going around the landmass. It's on the land. It's a mountain. Hello. And obviously we're going to move our mountains around the cities. Now remember, I told you I wanted to make very unique mountains for all of these cities. I ended up adding their dots, but the dots were added in conjunction with the mountains because I wanted to make the unique mountains first. So as you can see here in Dock 10, they've got a very unique mountain going on right here by the river. And I wanted to make sure that Dock 10's mountain looked different than Borok's mountain, or what was going on in Calrock, or what was going on in Ruck. So as you can see, those are all different. When you do the mountains, you also do your hills. You'll notice that when you do mountains and hills, they kind of have a flow to them. So for example, this mountain range, I needed it to kind of go across the coast, but I wanted to also kind of connect with the Gantzy Narrows, which is just a continuation of the mountain sort of as it goes into the Gantzy. You can add hills here and there, and hills are different than mountains. And if you guys would like to see more detailed instructions on how to draw mountains or how to draw hills or how to draw some of these things, we're gonna have videos on each of the different elements, so don't worry, you can check those out later. You'll also notice that hills in the sand are different than hills up in the grass or the mountains right next to it. Once you have all your mountains, because mountains are kind of a defining defining landscaping feature, then you can go back and start doing your trees, because trees are much smaller than mountains. They got to get added later. Now, this is the most painstakingly difficult part of the process, depending on what kind of style trees that you want to do. I decided that I wanted my map to look really full and my forests to look really full. So I wanted to draw trees that would make the forest look really vibrant and filled with life. I wanted to make trees that would make my forests look really thick and overgrown. So let me show you. When we bring our sketch back up, you'll notice that I have kind of this really nice thin line going around here. That is where I had planned for Whitestone Forest to be, something to that effect. Now, when I add my trees, bam, you'll see that I did pretty much go along with that first sketch line, but added trees outside of that line, or created indents, or created different. I added these big stone monuments hiding in the trees, because in that forest they have these big white stone monuments, right? And if you go over to Laurelith or Elderwood Forest, you'll notice a very similar thing happened here, where you can see that I had this kind of sketched out, roughed out area that this was going to be the forest, and as I added my trees, I kind of went around that and made different shapes and extra things going on there to give it a really lifelike feel to it. Kind of same with Black Marsh Forest. There was this nice sketched out area, and as we did it, we just kind of created this awesome shapes. The Wildlands, kind of see the same deal. There's this kind of sketched out shape, and then of course we added forest, and the forest went around the lake, of course, it didn't go into the lake. Drew a whole bunch of inlets and other things that you could see, just to give the forest more life and shape. If we had just drawn a circular forest, it wouldn't have looked good. It wouldn't have looked realistic. It wouldn't have had this. If we just did a circle of trees around this lake, it wouldn't have had this very organic feel to it. You want that organic feel. And you can mix your trees into the mountains, kind of in these valleys and areas. And if we look at this island, we basically covered this island in trees. It's a forested island. If we go up into the Drelek Mountains, and even in Drelek, they have trees and forests going on. And of course, you're gonna have forests by the rivers, right? Where the trees are thick and growing because they have a healthy supply of water. Now, like I said, the trees were a painstaking process, but that's because I chose to do a lot of trees, and I chose to make my forests very robust and very thick and full and give them a lot of shape. But you don't have to go that deep into the forests. You can draw a few different trees and give it the shape of the forest, but only have like 30 trees, and people will get the idea that, oh, I see, it's a forest there. You can give them the illusion without drawing as many trees as I did. It's a painstaking process, but I think it does come out pretty cool. Now, the last thing that you have to add, and I think this is the easiest thing, and it's the most personal thing that you can add, is add yourself a little signature right at the bottom of your map, so that people know that you are the one that drew it. You put that extra effort in, you put the heart into drawing that map and making it for the readers, and people appreciate that. Now, I know that was a lot of information to cover in such a short video, but I wanted to give you an overview of what you could do in your map. And all maps are going to be a little bit different. In fact, many maps aren't gonna need big forests because theirs is on a planet where they don't have forests, or they're not gonna have mountains, or the cities are going to be in the sky. Fantasy maps have this wide range of differences because, well, we've all created different worlds. That's one of the great things about fantasy. And I believe that your world deserves a map, and the readers deserve a map to get themselves immersed into your world. This isn't a difficult thing, and if you want to learn more about making a map kind of like this one that I made for my book, there's going to be more videos on this channel going into a little bit more of the details, the finer details on how to draw a forest like this one, how to draw the individual trees, or how to draw mountains like these ones, how to draw the lake, how to draw the rivers, how to do some of the more detailed elements of the map, and I'll walk you through all of those things in those videos. But for now, don't get discouraged. I promise you, you can do it. You don't have to be an artist. People will appreciate the map that you create. If you really run into trouble and you can't do it, you can always reach out to an illustrator like myself, like some of these other guys who are doing fantasy maps, and we can help you out. So subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you guys next time.